I need to tell someone what I saw, what I've been seeing. Because if I don't say it out loud, if I don't write it down somewhere, I think I'm going to lose my mind completely. Every night at exactly 2:11 a.m., the same car pulls into my gas station. And I don't mean similar. I don't mean same make and model. I mean the exact same car. Same cracked left taillight, same crooked front bumper, same faded pine tree air freshener swaying from the rearview mirror. Every single night. I've been working the overnight shift at the Sunoco on Route 9 for about 3 years now. Miles from the nearest town, surrounded by nothing but pine trees and a 2-lane highway that cuts through the dark like a scar. Most nights out here are quiet in a way that city people don't understand. It's not peaceful quiet. It's something else. It's the kind of silence that has weight, that presses against the windows of the station like it wants in. The fluorescent lights hum overhead and every few minutes a moth throws itself against the glass. And that's it. That's the whole world from midnight to 6. I noticed it first about 4 months ago. I'd been staring at the security monitor, not because there was anything to watch, but because staring at something is better than staring at nothing, when the headlights swept across the lot. A dark sedan. Mid-90s maybe. Hard to tell the color under the yellow sodium lights, but something between charcoal gray and black. It rolled in slow, the way cars do when the driver isn't sure they've found the right place. Then it stopped. Pump number 3. Not pump 1, which is closest to the road. Not pump 2, which is closest to the door. Pump 3 all the way at the far end of the lot, the one that sits closest to the tree line. I waited for the door to open. I waited for the courtesy light to flick on inside the cabin. I picked up the little handheld radio we used to call in problems, just habit, just something to hold. Nothing happened. The engine idled. The headlights stayed on. And I stood there behind the counter watching the clock on the register tick from 2:11 to 2:12 to 2:13, and still the driver's door never opened. At 2:17 the car rolled backward, slowly like a film being played in reverse. It pulled out of the lot without signaling, turned left onto Route 9, and disappeared into the dark. I told myself the driver must have realized they were at the wrong pump, or ran out of courage to get out in the cold, or fell asleep for 6 minutes and woke up confused. There are 100 reasonable explanations for one strange car, and I cycled through all of them. But the next night at 2:11 a.m. the car came back. Same pump. Same stillness. Same 6 minutes of nothing. And the night after that. And the night after that. By the second week I'd started watching for it. I'm ashamed to admit that. Watching for it, dreading it, and somehow also needing it to arrive so I could confirm I hadn't dreamed the whole thing. The lot would be empty, the highway dead, not a single car for hours, and then at 2:11 those headlights would appear at the edge of the road like two pale eyes opening. The car always slowed at the same point, always turned with the same languid curve, always came to rest at pump 3 with the kind of precision that felt deliberate, practiced. And then the silence would come down over everything, and I would stand behind the counter and try not to look directly at it, the way you're not supposed to look directly at something you're afraid of. It was a Tuesday in November when I finally walked out there. I'm not proud of how long it took me to work up the nerve, almost 2 full months of watching. But something had shifted that night. The fog was low, which it sometimes gets near the tree line, and the car was barely visible through it, just the glow of its headlights diffused into 2 smears of white. And I thought, enough. I grabbed my jacket and I pushed through the door and I walked across the lot. The gravel crunched under my feet. I remember that clearly. I remember the cold and the way my breath came out in small white clouds, and the way the fog thickened as I approached pump 3 until the rest of the station, the lights, the road, everything, felt very far away. I kept my eyes on the driver's side window. I could see a shape through the glass, someone sitting in the driver's seat, completely still. I raised my hand in a kind of wave, the way you do when you're trying to seem friendly and harmless. I said something like, "Hey, you need some help?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. I looked through the glass. And I wish with everything I have, that I hadn't. The man behind the wheel was slumped slightly to the left, his head lolling against the window at an angle that no sleeping person would choose. His face was turned toward me, gray-white in the station lights, and his eyes were open. Not open the way a person's eyes are open when they're awake. Open the way a door is open when there's no one left to close it. His hands were on the wheel, but they weren't gripping it. They were just resting there, loosely, like they'd been placed by someone else. There was something dark on the side of his face, along his temple, his cheekbone, dried and sunken into the skin. And he was not breathing. I could see that clearly. No rise of the chest. No fog from his lips in the cold air. Nothing. I ran. I don't remember making the decision. I was just suddenly running, and then I was behind the counter with the door locked and the phone in my hand, and I was calling 911 and trying to explain what I'd seen. When the patrol car arrived 12 minutes later, lights cutting through the fog, the deputy stepping out with his hand on his belt, the lot was empty. The car was gone. No tire marks. No oil on the asphalt. Nothing at pump 3 but the cold concrete and the hum of the light above it. They didn't exactly believe me. The deputy was polite about it, but I could see the way he looked at me, the way people look at you when they're deciding which kind of unstable you are. He took my statement and he left, and I spent the rest of the shift shaking behind the counter. But 2 weeks later he came back. Not in uniform this time. He came in for coffee before his shift, and after he paid, he stood at the counter for a moment like he was deciding something. Then he said he'd looked into it. He said there'd been a crash on Route 9, roughly a quarter mile north of the station, 7 years ago. A man driving alone late at night. He drifted across the center line. No other car involved, no obvious cause, and struck a utility pole. He died in the vehicle before the ambulance arrived. The deputy pulled out his phone and showed me the crash report photo. A dark sedan. Faded pine tree air freshener. Cracked left tail light. Crooked front bumper. I made him show it to me twice. I looked at it for a long time without saying anything. Then I asked what time the crash had been reported. He told me the call came in at 2:19 a.m., which meant the crash had likely happened around 2:11. I went back through the security footage after he left. I'd already done this, of course. I'd scrubbed through every single night looking for the car, and it was always there at 2:11, always at pump 3, always clear as anything. But this time I watched differently. I watched where it went when it left. I watched it back out of the lot, turn left onto Route 9, and then, this is the part I've been trying to explain to myself ever since, I watched it drive about 50 yards up the road and simply stop existing. Not drive out of frame. Not pass behind a tree. It was there, in the middle of the road, and then it was not there. The timestamp on the footage read 2:17 a.m. The deputy had told me the crash happened somewhere between 2:11 and 2:19. I've thought about this a lot in the months since. About what it means that the car always comes to pump 3. The pump farthest from the road, farthest from everything, the one that faces the trees in the dark. About whether he's stopping because some part of him knows he needs to. Whether pulling into a gas station at 2:11 a.m. was something he did that night, really did in the last minutes of his life, and whether whatever is left of him keeps doing it because it doesn't know how to stop. Whether he pulls back out every night onto Route 9 and drives north 50 yards and hits that pole again. Whether he does it without knowing. Whether he feels it. I still work the overnight shift. I don't know why. Maybe because leaving feels like admitting something I'm not ready to admit. Every night I watch the highway, and every night at 2:11 those headlights appear. The car rolls in slow and stops at pump 3 and sits there in the dark and the quiet, the engine turning, the pine tree swinging, the driver behind the wheel with his hands resting on the wheel and his head listing to the left and his eyes open and seeing nothing. And I stand behind the counter and I do not go outside. I just watch the clock. I watch it tick from 2:11 to 2:17. And then the car backs away and turns left, and for one moment I can see the red glow of its taillights, one whole, one cracked, disappearing up Route 9 toward a utility pole that has long since been repaired and repainted and has no memory of what it did. And then nothing. And then silence. And then morning, eventually, which is the only thing I have left to wait for.
The man I handed a receipt to on the night of October 14th had been dead for 12 years. I know that now. I didn't know it then, but looking back, I think some part of me did. Some animal part buried deep beneath rational thought, the part that still remembers when our ancestors had to fear the dark. That part of me knew. It was screaming the whole time. I just wasn't listening. You have to understand what it's like out there before any of this makes sense. I need you to feel it. The particular, suffocating quality of a night shift at a rural gas station in the middle of nowhere, because it isn't like any other kind of loneliness you've ever experienced. The station is called Pruitt's Fill and Go. It sits on State Route 9 in Harlan County, about 40 miles east of the nearest town worth naming, in a valley so deep and narrow that the cell signal drops to nothing after sundown. The surrounding hills are thick with pine and old-growth oak, the kind of forest that has never been fully mapped, the kind where deer hunters go in and sometimes don't come out. The highway cuts through it like a scar. 2 lanes, no median, no streetlights for the better part of 6 miles in either direction. When it's overcast, like it almost always is in October, the darkness beyond the pump canopy is absolute. Not dim, not shadowy. Absolute. The kind of dark that feels like it has weight. I started working the overnight, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., the summer after I dropped out of community college. That was 3 years before the night I'm telling you about. By then, I had grown comfortable with the silence. I'd made a kind of peace with it. I knew every sound the building made, the hum of the reach-in cooler behind the counter, the occasional creak of the roof when the temperature dropped, the buzz of the fluorescent lights that was just slightly too high-pitched to be completely ignorable. I knew the smell, diesel and pine sap and old coffee and the particular cold rubber smell of the wet asphalt in autumn. I knew the rhythm of the traffic, or rather the near-total absence of it. Between midnight and 4 in the morning, I might see 3 or 4 cars, sometimes none. Truckers ran I-40 to the south, the smarter ones. The people who ended up on Route 9 at 2 in the morning were lost, or local, or something else. The security camera system was old. I mean genuinely old. The kind with a grainy black and white monitor mounted under the counter, split into 4 quadrants showing 4 fixed angles. The pump island, the front door, the back hallway near the bathroom, and the parking lot. The footage recorded onto a hard drive that I'd been told could hold about 72 hours before it started overwriting itself. I never watched it live. Nobody did. It was just there, a formality, a rectangle of gray static and ghostly shapes that I occasionally glanced at when I was bored. I want you to remember that camera system. I want you to keep it in the back of your mind, the way I was keeping it in the back of mine that night without knowing why. October 14th was a Wednesday. Cold, maybe 40 degrees by midnight, with a low ceiling of cloud that turned the sky the color of a dirty bruise. I'd come in at 10 to relieve Danny Pruitt, the owner's nephew, who handed me the float drawer without making eye contact and told me the coffee maker had been acting up and that I should call him if anything weird happened. I remember thinking that was a strange thing to say, if anything weird happened, because Danny had never said that before, not once in 3 years. He was halfway to his truck before I could ask him what he meant, and then his taillights were swallowed by the dark, and I was alone. Nothing happened for the first 2 hours. I drank bad coffee, read a paperback I'd already read twice, watched the road. A minivan with Missouri plates came through around 11:30, and a woman bought 2 bags of chips and a bottle of water and looked at me with the particular exhausted desperation of someone driving through the night to get somewhere important. She didn't speak beyond what was necessary. At 12:40, a local man named Gerald Trace, who I knew by face if not well, stopped for diesel and paid at the pump. He didn't come inside. I watched his taillights disappear south. Then nothing. The clock on the wall read 1:17 a.m. when the headlights appeared. I saw them first as a pale glow on the hill to the north, the direction of the dead highway, moving slowly, more slowly than most cars traveled this road, which itself was slower than the interstate. There was something unhurried about the approach that registered somewhere below conscious thought. I watched through the plate glass window as the glow crested the hill and resolved into a pair of headlights, old style, slightly yellowed, the kind you see on cars from the early 90s or late 80s. The car itself came into the pool of the pump canopy light gradually, the way something surfaces from deep water. First an impression, then a shape, then a thing. It was a 1991 Buick LeSabre, dark blue, or what had once been dark blue. The paint had the chalky, oxidized quality of a car that had spent years in the weather, the clear coat long since surrendered. There was a crack in the passenger side headlight casing that had been repaired, or half repaired, with what looked like electrical tape, now mostly peeled away. The car pulled up to the pump island and stopped. The engine shut off. For a long moment, nothing happened. I was watching through the window, the way I always watched new arrivals in those first few seconds before they became mundane and ordinary. It's a habit you develop on the overnight shift, a kind of low-level threat assessment that happens automatically. And I remember that I felt something during those few seconds of stillness before the door opened. I couldn't have named it then. I'd call it now a wrongness. Not fear exactly, not yet. More like the sensation of a word you can't quite remember. Something at the edge of awareness. Something that should be there but isn't. The driver's door opened and the man got out. He was tall, 6'1", maybe 6'2", with the kind of lean build that looks like it was once athletic and has since become something more spare, more worn. He wore a jacket, canvas or Carhartt, the color of old rust, over a dark flannel shirt, blue jeans, and work boots that were caked with dry mud along the soles. He moved around the front of the car toward the pump with a particular quality of unhurriedness that I'd already noticed in his approach, a kind of deliberateness that wasn't slow so much as precise, like a man who has learned not to waste motion. His face, when he came fully under the canopy lights, was, and I have spent a long time trying to find a better word for this, still. Not expressionless, exactly. More like the stillness of a portrait. Features that were arranged in a configuration suggesting calm or patience, or something adjacent to both, but without the micro-movements that living faces make constantly, the flickers of thought and mood and physical sensation that we don't notice until they're absent. He glanced toward the window, and I felt certain, in the way you feel certain about things in dreams, that he could see me through the glass, even though the interior fluorescence would have turned the window into a partial mirror from his angle. He raised one hand in a small acknowledgement gesture, not quite a wave, more like the lifted finger greeting you see between strangers on rural roads, and then turned to the pump. He lifted the nozzle. He saw the out-of-order sign that I'd taped over the card reader on pump 2, the pump he'd pulled up to, and he looked at it for a moment. Then he replaced the nozzle and walked toward the door. The bell above the door chimed when he came in, the same bell it had always chimed, and he stepped inside and the door swung shut behind him. He stood for a moment just inside the entrance, and he looked around. Not the way someone looks around a gas station convenience store, tracking the layout, locating what they need. He looked around the way someone looks at a place they remember. Slowly, taking inventory. His eyes moved across the shelving units, the cooler at the back, the rack of road maps that nobody bought anymore, the bulletin board with its ancient flyers for lawn services and lost pets, the water-stained ceiling tiles above the coffee station. His gaze passed over all of it with the quality of a man confirming something he already knew. And then he looked at me, and he smiled. It was a gentle smile. Tired, maybe. The smile of someone who has been traveling for a long time. "Pump 2's out," he said. "Card reader's broken," I said. "Pump 3 or 4 work fine, or you can prepay inside." "I'll prepay inside," he said, and he came to the counter. He reached into the jacket pocket and produced a fold of cash. Bills, not a wallet. Just a rubber-banded fold of currency that he peeled apart with the careful movements of someone accustomed to handling money carefully. He placed a 20 on the counter. "20 on 4, he said. I put it through the register. He stood with his hands resting on the edge of the counter and looked around the store again with that same slow, confirming quality. "You get much traffic out here this time of night?" he asked. His voice was measured, level, the kind of voice that doesn't rise and fall much. "Not a lot," I said. "You heading somewhere particular?" He considered this, or appeared to. "Just driving," he said. And then, after a pause that lasted a beat longer than natural, "This place looks exactly the same." I looked up from the register. "You been here before?" He was quiet for a moment. He was looking at the bulletin board. "Long time ago," he said. "Didn't change much," I agreed, because it was true. The Pruitt family wasn't big on renovation. He nodded, still looking at the bulletin board, and then he turned and walked back toward the door. He pushed it open and the bell chimed and he stepped out into the dark. I watched through the window as he moved back to his car, back to pump 4, and I watched him fill the tank. He stood with one hand resting on the roof of the Buick while the pump ran, his back to me, looking out at the dark highway. Not at his phone, not at anything, just looking at the road. When the pump clicked off, he replaced the nozzle and got back into the car. The engine started. The headlights came on. He pulled out of the lot and turned north on Route 9, back the direction he'd come from. I watched the lights move up the hill and disappear, and I stood there for a moment in the silence, and I tried to identify the feeling I was having. It was like the aftertaste of something, like a note played in a minor key that keeps resonating after the music stops. I turned back to the register. His 20 was in the drawer. That was when I noticed I hadn't seen his breath. It had been 40 degrees outside. When I'd carried trash to the dumpster at midnight, my breath had fogged visibly in the cold air. But when the man had come inside and stood at the counter, the store was only marginally warmer than outside, the heating unit at Pruitt's being as half-functional as everything else. I hadn't seen his breath fog, not once. I stood very still with this thought, and then I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I'd simply not noticed, that people don't register every detail. I poured a fresh cup of bad coffee and I went back to my book. I don't know exactly what made me look. It was about an hour later, maybe 2. The highway had stayed empty. I'd read the same 3 pages of my book 4 times without absorbing a word. The wrongness I'd felt hadn't dissipated. If anything, it had settled deeper, become more insistent, like a splinter working its way inward. I kept turning the man over in my mind, his stillness, his smile, the way he'd looked at the store with that quality of recognition, and the thing he'd said. This place looks exactly the same, as if he'd been gone not just for years, but for long enough that he'd expected it to have changed entirely. I got up and went behind the counter and opened the cabinet under the register where old Harlan Pruitt kept accumulated years of miscellany. Expired coupons, unused receipt rolls, a broken stapler, the operating manuals for equipment that had been replaced a decade ago, and shoved in the back, behind a phone book from 2007, a fat manila envelope that I had seen before but never opened, labeled in black marker, Keep Insurance/Incident Files. I don't know why I opened it. I have no good explanation. Call it instinct. Call it something older than instinct. Inside were photocopied incident reports, a few old insurance forms, some faded photographs of the parking lot and pump island after what looked like a storm. And then, folded in thirds at the back of the envelope, a photocopy of a newspaper article. The Harlan County Register, dated October 17th, 12 years earlier. The headline read, "Local man dies in crash at Pruitt's Fill and Go. 3rd fatality on Route 9 this year." I unfolded it fully and read it under the counter light. The article described a single-car accident that had occurred in the early morning hours of October 14th, 12 years ago to the night. A man had been traveling north on Route 9 when his vehicle had left the road at the entrance to Pruitt's Fill and Go, striking the pump island. The car had caught fire. The man had not survived. He had been identified as Raymond Allen Cutter, age 34, of Bowman, Tennessee. A photograph accompanied the article. The photograph showed a tall man with a lean build and a still, composed face. A man wearing a canvas jacket the color of old rust, in a photograph taken at some public event, smiling that tired, gentle smile. The $20 bill in the register drawer was real. I checked it 3 times. I stood behind the counter of Pruitt's Fill and Go at approximately 3 in the morning, and I held a 12-year-old newspaper article in my hands, and I looked at a photograph of a dead man, and I thought about the question he had asked me. "You get much traffic out here this time of night?" And I thought about how he had looked around the store with that slow, confirming gaze. And I thought about his breath, and how I hadn't seen it. My hands were shaking. I put the article down on the counter. I looked at the security monitor under the counter, the gray, split-quadrant display, grainy and flickering. I thought about the angle from inside the store. The front door had a full-length glass panel, and beside it, a large plate glass window. From the pump island, those surfaces would partially reflect. They would show the customer a ghostly image of themselves against the exterior dark, the way glass does at night when the interior is lit. I hadn't been watching the reflection. I'd been watching him. But the security camera. Camera 1 covered the pump island from a fixed angle mounted above the door. Camera 2 covered the front door from inside. The footage was all still on the drive. I pulled up the footage from camera 2. Positioned to cover the entrance, it captured the full interior side of the door and the large window beside it. Anyone standing inside that window at night would be visible both directly in frame and as a reflection in the glass. I rewound to 1:17 a.m. and I pressed play. I watched myself look up from my book. I watched myself track something that I could see approaching. The headlights, I knew, coming down the hill. I watched the door open, the bell arm swing, and a man-shaped disturbance in the air step through the entrance. The door opened on its own. No hand on the push bar, just the door, swinging inward as if moved by a gust of wind, and then swinging slowly back. On the monitor, I watched myself look at empty space and say something. I knew I was saying pump 2's out. And I watched myself enter a 20 into the register and make change that I handed to no one, and watched nothing walk back to the door and leave. In the reflection of the plate glass window, I was completely alone. The door opened again and swung shut. The bell chimed. Both times, on the footage, there was nothing there. Just the bell swinging on its own spring mount, and the door moving in a windless night, and me, standing behind the counter, talking to empty air, conducting an entire transaction with nothing. The Pump Island camera showed the same story. The Buick was there. It was real. It was physical. It showed up on camera as clearly as Gerald Trace's truck had shown up 2 hours earlier. The car had pulled up. The pump nozzle had moved. The pump counter had ticked. The car had left. But the man who moved the nozzle, who stood with one hand on the roof of the car, looking at the dark road, was not there. The nozzle lifted and moved and was held at an angle appropriate to someone filling a tank, but the someone was absent. A ghost-shaped nothing standing in the canopy lights. I sat down on the floor behind the counter because my legs gave out. I quit the next morning. I left a note for Harlan Pruitt, and I drove home and I sat in my apartment for 3 days, and I didn't sleep. Eventually I called Danny Pruitt, who had told me to call if anything weird happened, and I asked him why he'd said that. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said his uncle had told him never to work the overnight on October 14th, that something happened on that date, had been happening for years, that the old overnight guys had seen things, that Harlan kept that newspaper article in the cabinet as a kind of, he fumbled for the word, a kind of record, evidence, proof that he wasn't imagining it. I drove back to the county records office in town, and I pulled the accident report for Raymond Allen Cutter. The official documentation was clinical and exact. Single vehicle accident, 1:22 a.m., October 14th. Vehicle left roadway northbound, struck Pump Island at Pruitt's Fill and Go. Fire. No survivors. No other vehicles involved. Raymond Cutter had been returning from visiting family in Knoxville, according to the report, traveling north, the same direction he'd gone when he pulled out of my lot. I found his obituary. He had been 34 years old. He had worked in construction. He had no children. He was survived by a sister in Bowman, Tennessee. He was described by those who knew him as a quiet man, unhurried, deliberate, a man who didn't waste words. I spoke to one other overnight employee, a woman named Paula who'd worked the station in the mid-2000s and had left without explanation after a single winter. She confirmed it without my needing to describe much. She just said, "Tall man, rust-colored jacket, asks about traffic. And when I said yes, she said she knew. She said she'd seen the footage too. She said she had no explanation and had spent years trying to find one and had stopped trying. I asked her if she thought he knew, if Raymond Cutter knew he was dead. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think he comes back because that's where it happened. I think he pulls off the highway every year on that date because that's what his body remembers doing. I don't think he knows anything. I think he's just..." And here she paused. "I think he's still making the same drive." I no longer work at Pruitt's Fill and Go. I moved 2 counties east and I work days now in a hardware store under fluorescent lights that buzz a slightly different pitch. And I have a window that looks out onto a parking lot with other people in it. And I have not worked a graveyard shift since. I sleep better than I used to most nights. But October comes around every year. It always does. And on the morning of October 14th, I always wake before dawn, and I lie in the dark, and I think about a 2-lane highway running through a narrow valley 50 miles west of me, and a gas station sitting in a pool of yellow light, and a road coming down from the north, and somewhere up in those dark hills, a pair of old yellowed headlights cresting a rise. I think about Pump 4 and a $20 bill, and a man who looked around a store he'd been to before and said it looked exactly the same. I think about a grainy security monitor and a door that opened on its own. The current overnight attendant at Pruitt's Fill and Go is a 19-year-old kid named Marcus. I know this because I drove past once, around 8 months ago in daylight, just to reassure myself it was still there, still ordinary. I saw him through the window, sitting behind the counter the way I used to sit, reading something, unhurried. I thought about stopping, about going in and telling him to call in sick on October 14th, to find a reason, any reason. I didn't stop. I drove past. But every October, in the last few days before the 14th, I think about Marcus behind that counter in the middle of the night, and I think about the hills to the north, and I think about a Buick LeSabre with one oxidized headlight casing and mud on the tires, moving down from the dark at 1:17 in the morning. And I think about how Raymond Cutter smiled when he came inside, that tired, patient smile, like a man who had been traveling for a very long time and was glad, in some deep and wordless way, to find himself somewhere familiar, like he was almost home. I hope Marcus calls in sick. I really do.
She was just standing there. That's the part one keep coming back to. No car pulling away. No headlights fading down Route 9. No sound of footsteps on gravel. 1 second the lot was empty, I know because I just looked out, and the next second she was there, standing at Pump 4, hands at her sides, staring at the glass door of the store like she was waiting for permission to breathe. I was 7 hours into my overnight shift at Callaway's Gas and Go. It was a Tuesday in late October, which meant the temperature had dropped into the low 40s and the last customer I'd seen had come through around midnight to buy a bag of pork rinds and a Red Bull. After that, nothing. Just me, the hum of the fluorescent lights, and the flat black highway that stretched out in both directions like God had drawn a line through the world and couldn't decide what to put on either side of it. I'd been reading. Some paperback I'd grabbed from the break room shelf, the kind with a creased spine and someone else's coffee ring on the cover. I don't even remember what it was about. Because at 2:17 in the morning I looked up from that book, for no reason I can name, just some animal instinct that told me to, and I saw her. A little girl. She couldn't have been older than 8, maybe 9 at the most. She was wearing a dress, pale blue, maybe white, it was hard to tell under the sodium lights, and her hair was dark and loose around her shoulders. She wasn't wearing a coat. She wasn't wearing shoes. I remember that clearly. The bare feet. The lot around her was wet from an earlier drizzle, and she was standing on black asphalt in bare feet and she didn't seem to notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. I set my book down slow, the way you move when some part of your brain hasn't caught up to what your eyes are seeing. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A car had broken down somewhere up the road. Her parents were out there in the dark, calling for help. There was always a mundane answer. There had to be. I stepped out from behind the counter. The bell above the door chimed when I pushed it open. Cold air rushed in against my face, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and something else underneath it, something I couldn't name then and still can't now. Something sweet and wrong, like flowers left in a vase too long. "Hey," I called out. "Hey, sweetheart, are you okay?" She turned her head to look at me. And I want to be careful how I describe this, because I've turned it over in my mind 100 times since that night and I still can't quite make the words fit. She turned her head too slow. Not in a sleepy way or a dazed way. Slow in the way that things move in dreams, where motion feels deliberate and slightly wrong, like the physics are being politely ignored. Her face was pale. Her eyes were dark. She looked at me without any of the fear you'd expect from a child alone in the middle of the night being approached by a stranger. She looked at me like she'd been expecting me, like she'd been waiting for me. "Can you call my mom?" she said. Her voice carried perfectly across the lot. No wind, no road noise, nothing to compete with it. Just her voice, clear and flat and oddly hollow, like someone speaking into an empty room. "Of course," I said. I was already moving toward her. "Of course, honey. Where's your mom? Did your car break down? Is she?" "She's not here." The girl's eyes didn't move from mine. "Can you call her? I know her number." I stopped a few feet away from her. Up close, she looked the same as she had from the window. Too pale. Too still. Her dress had a lace collar and a small dark stain near the hem that I told myself was mud. Her hair lay flat against her head even though there was a breeze moving through the lot, bending the little triangular flag strung across the canopy, lifting a crumpled receipt off the ground near pump 2. Her hair didn't move at all. "Come inside," I said. "It's cold. I'll get you something warm and we'll call your mom together, okay?" She shook her head, small and certain. "I'll wait here." "Honey, it's 2 in the morning. You shouldn't be out here alone." "I'll wait here," she said again. Her voice didn't change. No tremor, no insistence, no childish pleading. Just the same flat certainty like a door clicking shut. "Will you call her?" I looked down Route 9 in both directions. Nothing. No hazard lights blinking in the distance. No silhouette of a broken down car. No one walking toward us down the shoulder of the road. The highway was empty in both directions as far as the dark would let me see, and there was no sound of anything beyond the lot. No crickets, no wind through the tree line, no distant engine. Just silence so complete it felt like pressure. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. "What's the number?" I asked. She told me. I dialed. It rang 3 times. I watched the girl while I waited. She stood with her arms at her sides, her bare feet on the wet asphalt, her eyes on something past my shoulder. She wasn't shivering. She wasn't shifting her weight from foot to foot the way kids do when they're uncomfortable or nervous. She was just still. Perfectly, profoundly still. Someone picked up on the 4th ring. "Hello?" A woman's voice. Rough with sleep or maybe something else. Something older than sleep. "Hi, I'm so sorry to call this late," I said. "I'm at the Callaway's gas and go on Route 9, and I have a little girl here who says she's your daughter. She asked me to call you. Is your..." The sound that came through the phone then was not something I have words for. It was not a scream. It was lower than that. It came from somewhere below language, below thought. It was the sound of something being torn open. And then she started crying. Not soft crying. Not the kind that comes with apologies and composure. She was weeping the way people do when the thing they have been holding back for years finally finds a crack in the wall and breaks through all at once. Gasping, shuddering, the kind of crying that uses the whole body. "Ma'am?" I said. "Ma'am, are you?" "Where are you?" she managed. Her voice was barely holding together. "Say that address again." "Say it." I said the address. There was a silence. And in that silence I heard her breathing, ragged, wet, struggling towards something. "My daughter," she said, and her voice broke clean in half on the second word. "My daughter died. 3 years ago. The car, she was coming home from her grandmother's and the car, it went off the road right there, right near that." She couldn't finish. She tried twice. Couldn't. I turned around. The lot was empty. Pump 4. The wet asphalt. The yellow glow of the overhead lights. The highway beyond, black and flat and silent. Gone. I walked the entire lot. I checked both sides of the building. I looked down Route 9 in both directions until the dark swallowed everything and there was nothing left to see. Nothing. I told the woman on the phone what had happened. All of it. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to say it out loud to believe it myself, or maybe some part of me understood that she deserved to hear it. She didn't say much. She asked me to describe the dress. I described it. She made a sound I won't forget. "That was what she was wearing," she whispered. "That was her dress." We stayed on the phone together for a while after that. I don't know how long. Neither of us said very much. There wasn't much to say. Before we hung up, I told her I was going to pull the security footage. She asked me to tell her what I found. I told her I would. The camera mounted above the entrance covers the full canopy, all 6 pumps. The resolution isn't great, but it's good enough. I sat at the monitor in the back room and I scrubbed to 2:17 a.m. and I watched myself look up from my book. Watched myself put it down. Watched myself walk to the door and push it open. I watched myself stand in the doorway talking to empty air. I watched myself take my phone out and dial. Stand there nodding. Turn around and walk the perimeter of the lot, looking for something that wasn't there. I watched all of that. And then I scrubbed back. I went to the widest angle, the one that catches the pumps and the ground in front of them. I found 2:17. I let it play. There was no girl. But there was something else. At pump 4, between the timestamp of 2 hours 17 minutes and 3 seconds and 2 hours 19 minutes and 41 seconds, the full span of time I was outside, the black asphalt directly in front of the pump is slightly different from everywhere else on the lot. Everything else in frame is flat, two-dimensional, the way security footage always looks. But there, at pump 4, the shadows are wrong. I don't know how else to say it. The shadows fall the wrong direction. Or rather, they don't fall at all. The light above pump 4 casts shadows in every direction, onto the ground, onto the pump housing, onto the yellow painted number on the island curb. But directly in front of the pump, in the space where a small person would be standing if a small person were there are no shadows on the ground. There should be. Something is blocking the light. You can see the difference if you know where to look. Whatever was there wasn't standing on the ground. It was standing 6, maybe 8 inches above it. I've watched the footage 40, maybe 50 times. I've shown it to 2 other people. Both of them saw the same thing I did. Neither of them has a good explanation. I don't have a good explanation. I called the woman back the next morning like I said I would. I told her what I'd found on the camera. She was quiet for a long time. And then she said something I've been carrying around ever since, the way you carry a stone in your pocket, feeling the weight of it even when you're not thinking about it. She said, she always hated being barefoot on cold ground. I used to have to chase her every summer just to get her to wear shoes outside. She paused. Maybe she just wanted someone to know she was there. I don't work nights at Callaway's anymore. I don't work there at all. But some nights I still think about pump 4. About bare feet that weren't touching the ground. About a little girl in a pale dress asking a stranger to make a call her mother had been waiting 3 years to receive. About how sometimes the dead don't wander because they're lost. Sometimes they wander because there's still one thing left undone. And they'll wait at the edge of the light, patient as stones, until someone finally looks up. The last thing I saw before I quit that job was my own reflection, and the man standing behind me who wasn't there. I know how that sounds. I've replayed it 1,000 times. But I need to tell someone because I've been holding this in for 2 years, and it's starting to eat me alive. My name is Marcus. I was 23 when I took the overnight shift at a Sunoco station just off Route 9, about 40 minutes outside of town. Nothing special about the place, just a squat little building with 2 pumps, a walk-in cooler, a wall of lottery scratchers, and a single-stall bathroom in the back that smelled like mildew no matter how many times I cleaned it. The kind of job you take when you're between things. When you're trying not to think too hard about your life. The overnight shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Mostly it was dead. A few truckers. A couple of drunk college kids buying Red Bull at 2 in the morning. The occasional guy who'd pull up, stare at the pumps for 30 seconds, and then drive away without buying anything. That always creeped me out more than anything else, but nothing like what came later. It started on my 3rd week. I was restocking the drink cooler around midnight when I heard it, a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks from inside the bathroom. The kind you'd make if your hands were full and you were asking someone to open the door from the outside. Here's the thing, no one had gone in there. I would have seen them. The bathroom was visible from behind the counter. You had to walk right past me to get to it. The door had been closed all night, the little plastic indicator on the knob still turned to vacant. I told myself it was the pipes. Old building. Old pipes. Perfectly rational. I went back to restocking. Then the lights in the bathroom started flickering. Again, old building, old wiring. I made a note to tell my manager in the morning. But there was something about the rhythm of the flicker that I couldn't shake. It wasn't random. It was almost patient, like a pulse. Waiting. By the end of that first week, I had started hearing the whispers. I don't know how else to describe it. Not words exactly. more like the shape of words, like hearing someone talking in another room through a wall, where you can feel the cadence of speech without catching a single syllable. It only happened near the bathroom. And it only happened when I was alone. I started propping the hallway door open with a mop bucket so I wouldn't have to walk past that bathroom door. I started taking my bathroom breaks right after a customer left, never when the store was empty. I started doing everything I could to avoid going in there. For about 2 weeks that worked. Then the mirror showed me something I couldn't explain away. It was a Thursday night, 2:30 in the morning. I'd been holding it for almost an hour, but nature finally won. I pushed open the bathroom door, hit the light. It buzzed, flickered once, held, and stepped up to the sink. The mirror above the sink was old, slightly foggy around the edges. One of those cheap steel frame things bolted directly into drywall. I turned on the tap, started washing my hands, and glanced up at my reflection. There was someone standing behind me. A man. Tall, taller than me, and I'm 6'1". He was standing maybe 4 feet back, just to the left of the stall door, and he was completely still. Dark clothing, dark hair, and his face. I couldn't quite make out his face. It was like looking at something through dirty glass, like his features were just slightly out of focus even though everything else in the reflection was sharp. I spun around. Nothing. The bathroom was empty. The stall door was open. No one was there. My heart was slamming. I checked the stall, empty. Checked behind the door, nothing. I stood there in that tiny bathroom for a full minute, completely alone, listening to the faucet drip. I told myself it was a trick of the light. Tired eyes. Shadows from the flickering bulb. I went back to the counter. I did not look in that mirror again. But I kept going back to the bathroom because I had to, and every single time, he was there. Same spot. Same stillness. Same blurred, patient face watching me from just over my left shoulder. And every time I turned around, nothing. I started timing it. 5 seconds of him in the mirror. Turn around. Empty room. Turn back. He's there again. It was like he existed only in the reflection, in that liminal silver space between what's real and what's shown back to you. After the 4th or 5th time, I started to notice something else. He wasn't always looking at me. Sometimes he was just standing there, head slightly bowed like he was staring at the floor. But sometimes, and this is the part that made me stop sleeping well, sometimes his head was tilted toward me, like he was listening. I lasted 3 more weeks before I started asking questions. I didn't go to my manager right away. I went to Dale, the guy who worked the evening shift before me. Dale had been at that station for 11 years. He knew everything about the place. Which pump ran slow, which cooler shelf sagged, which regular customers were chatty, and which ones you should just leave alone. I described what I'd been seeing. I tried to be clinical about it. Just the facts. He listened without interrupting, which wasn't like Dale at all. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Nobody told you about the bathroom?" I said no. He pulled out his phone and showed me a news article. Local paper, dated 9 years earlier. The headline read, "Man found dead in gas station restroom after 3 days." His name was Raymond Elias Poole. 51 years old, no permanent address, known to pass through the area during the warmer months. He'd been found in that single-stall bathroom, our bathroom, after a customer complained about the smell. The coroner estimated he'd been in there for somewhere between 60 and 72 hours before anyone checked. He'd had a heart attack, alone, in the dark, with no one to hear him. Dale said the previous owner had done everything right, called the authorities, cleaned the bathroom, even replaced the mirror after some employee complained it gave them a bad feeling. But the new mirror had gone up in the same spot, same angle, same frame. And the complaints had continued. I asked Dale if he'd ever seen anything. He just said, "I don't use that bathroom," and changed the subject. I might have been able to convince myself it was all psychological. Grief made visible, guilt projected outward. Some kind of empathic haunting built from a tragic story I just learned. I might have talked myself down from the ledge. But then the district manager came in to review the security footage. This was routine. They checked the tapes every month for inventory discrepancies, and this time he was doing it in the back office while I worked the counter. He'd been in there for maybe 40 minutes when he came out and asked me very carefully if we'd had any unusual incidents lately. Any customers behaving strangely. Any equipment malfunctions. I said no. I asked why. He turned his laptop around and showed me the screen. The footage was from 2 Tuesdays before. 3:47 a.m. The store was empty. I was alone behind the counter. The camera angle covered the full interior from a high corner mount, showing the drink coolers, the snack aisles, the counter, and the convex security mirror mounted on the ceiling in the far corner near the bathrooms. You know those convex mirrors? The big round ones that stores use to see around corners to catch shoplifters in the back aisles? They give you a wide fisheye view of the whole space. In the main camera footage, I was alone. Just me sitting behind the counter reading a magazine. But in the convex mirror's reflection, visible in the corner of the same frame, there was a second figure. Tall. Standing motionless in the middle of the snack aisle, about 10 feet behind me. Just standing there watching. The district manager scrubbed forward. At 3:52, I got up and walked to the back to check the cooler. The figure in the mirror moved with me. Still behind me. Still 10 feet back. Still watching. At 3:58, I walked toward the bathroom hallway. The figure followed, but it never appeared in the direct camera footage. Only in the reflections. The convex mirror near the entrance. The glass of the refrigerator doors. A brief flash in the dark window of the front entrance as I passed. Always behind me. Always 10 feet back. Always watching. Only in reflections. Never in the real world. The district manager asked if I had an explanation. I didn't give him one. I quit the next morning. Didn't even finish the shift. Left my keys on the counter and walked out while the sunrise was still pink and said nothing to anyone. For a long time after, I told myself it was over. I'd left. Whatever Raymond Elias Poole was, whatever he'd become in that bathroom after 3 days of dying alone, he was tied to that place. To those mirrors. To that building. I'd walked out. I was done. That's what I told myself. About 6 months later, I moved into a new apartment. Nice place. 3rd floor. Clean bathroom. I was brushing my teeth the first night and I glanced up at the mirror over the sink. Just a quick, automatic glance, the way you do without thinking, and for just a fraction of a second, just a sliver of a moment, I saw something in the reflection of the dark hallway behind me. The shape. Tall. Patient. I turned on every light in the apartment. I checked every room. I found nothing. But here's the thing about Raymond Elias Poole. Here's the thing I keep coming back to, the thing that makes it hard to sleep. He died alone. In a bathroom. In the dark. For 3 days no one checked. For 3 days no one noticed he was gone. I think he just wanted someone to see him. I think he's been following me because I'm the only one who ever did. And I know, that wherever I go, whatever mirror I look into for the rest of my life, he'll be there. 10 feet back. Waiting to be seen. They found his time card still punched in. They never found him. I almost didn't take the job. Not because the pay was bad, it wasn't. Not because the hours were brutal, midnight to 6, every night, alone. I almost didn't take it because of the way the hiring manager looked at me when I said I was interested in the night shift. Not relieved. Not grateful. Something else. Something that sat behind his eyes like a stone at the bottom of a dark well. He held the pen out to me and said quietly, almost carefully, "You're sure?" I signed the papers anyway. I needed the money. That's always how it starts, isn't it? My first day, my first night, a woman named Carla was supposed to train me. She was maybe 50, with the kind of face that had stopped being surprised by things a long time ago. She walked me through the register, showed me the mop closet, explained the lottery machine. Standard stuff. But then she stopped in the middle of aisle 3, right between the motor oil and the beef jerky, and she turned to me with her arms crossed and her voice dropped low. "There are rules," she said. "For nights." I thought she meant policy. Procedure. I almost laughed. She didn't hand me a pamphlet. She recited them from memory, like a prayer she'd said so many times the words had worn grooves in her tongue. "Don't go into the stockroom after 3 a.m. Don't turn off the radio. It doesn't matter what you hear, do not turn it off. If the cooler door opens on its own, you close it, you walk away and you do not look inside." And the most important one, the one she saved for last, the one she said while looking directly into my eyes without blinking. "If you see someone in the uniform, the old uniform, the dark green one, do not speak to it. Do not follow it. And whatever you do not let it see your face." I asked her what she meant. She picked up her bag, told me my shift started in 10 minutes and walked out the door without looking back. I stood there under the fluorescent lights, listening to the hum of the refrigerator units along the back wall, and I felt it for the first time, that feeling. The feeling that the building had taken a breath and was holding it. That the silence underneath the buzzing lights wasn't empty at all. That something in the geometry of the place was slightly, wrongly off, the way a familiar face looks different in a dream. Too still. Too aware. I told myself it was nerves. I was wrong. The first 2 hours passed the way first nights do. Slow and strange, the kind of slow that has texture to it, like dragging your hand through cold water. A trucker came in around 1. A teenager bought a Red Bull and left without making eye contact. The radio played classic rock and then static and then classic rock again, and I reached over to find a cleaner station before I remembered what Carla had said and pulled my hand back. I restocked the cigarettes behind the counter. I wiped down the coffee machine. I counted the till twice just to give myself something to do with my hands. At 1:47, I heard the footsteps. They came from the back of the store, from behind the shelving units near the stockroom door. Slow, deliberate, the soft compression of a shoe sole against linoleum. 1, 2, 3. Then silence. I called out, "Hello, we're open," in the professionally unbothered voice of someone who is absolutely bothered. Nothing. I walked the aisles. Empty. The stockroom door was closed. I put my hand on the handle. I remembered Carla's rule. I walked back to the register. At 2:15, a drawer opened. Not a cash register drawer, those have a mechanism, a sound you recognize. This was one of the drawers beneath the counter, the shallow ones where the previous shifts left pens and rubber bands and takeout menus. It slid open with a slow wooden groan, and by the time I spun around it was sitting open, fully extended, and the store was empty and I was alone and the radio kept playing and I closed the drawer with 2 fingers like it might bite me. At 2:40, something moved behind the counter. I was facing the window watching the empty parking lot when I saw it in the reflection. Just a shape. Just a suggestion. A figure standing at the far end of the counter near the door to the back office. Upright. So. There and then not there, like a frame cut from a film. I turned around so fast I knocked over a cup of pens. Nothing. Just the hum of the lights. Just the faint wheeze of the cooler units. Just my own breathing, which had gotten louder than I'd like to admit. I stood there for a long moment. And then, because I am apparently the kind of person who leans into things instead of away from them, I pulled up the security camera feed on the monitor behind the counter. There are 6 cameras in that store. 1 covers the entrance. 1 covers each of the 4 main aisles. And 1 covers the area behind the counter. A wide-angle shot that includes the register, the back office door, and the narrow corridor that runs between them. I watched the feed from aisle 3. Empty. Aisle 4. Empty. The entrance. Empty. Behind the counter. I stared at the screen for a long time before my brain fully processed what I was seeing. The image was grainy. These are the cheap, fluorescent bleached cameras that gas stations have used for 30 years, the kind where everything looks like a memory. But the shape in the frame was clear enough. There was someone standing at the far end of the counter. Not moving. Just standing there facing the register. Wearing a uniform. A dark green uniform. My first thought, God help me, was that it was a coworker. An early arrival. Someone who'd forgotten something from a previous shift. My brain worked very hard and very fast to build a reasonable explanation, because reasonable explanations are the last shelter we run to before we accept the thing we're actually looking at. I called out. Nothing moved on the screen. I called out again. The figure didn't turn. Didn't flinch. Just stood there with its back to the camera, facing the register, as if it were waiting for a customer that wasn't coming. I walked to the edge of the counter. I leaned forward and looked down the corridor. It was empty. I walked back to the monitor. The figure was still there on the screen. I did this 3 times. Each time the corridor was empty. Each time the screen showed someone standing in it. My hands were shaking in that specific way hands shake when the body knows something the mind is still refusing to accept. I sat down on the stool behind the register and I called my manager. He picked up on the 4th ring, voice thick with sleep. I told him what I was seeing. I described the uniform, the color, the cut. The way the figure just stood there, not moving, not turning. I heard him go very quiet on the other end of the line. Not the quiet of confusion, the quiet of recognition. "What camera?" he said. "Behind the counter. Camera 6. Another silence. Longer. "Listen to me," he said, and his voice had changed in a way I still think about. Slower. Deliberate. The way you speak to someone standing on a ledge. "Don't go behind the counter. Don't approach it. Go stand near the entrance where you can see the door and you wait for morning. Do you understand me?" I asked him who it was. He said, his name was Daniel Marsh. He worked nights here for about 8 months. Young guy, your age, maybe a little younger. Good worker. Showed up on time, never complained. Past tense. All past tense. He came in for his shift on a Tuesday. We found his time card in the morning, clocked in, never clocked out. His car was still in the lot. His jacket was on the hook in the back office. His keys were on the counter. He just vanished? We never found him. Police came. They checked everything. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign he'd left. He was just gone. Like the building swallowed him. I looked at the monitor. The figure was still there. That was 11 years ago, my manager said. And you are not the first person to call me from that shift and tell me what you're seeing. The radio cut out. In the silence I heard it again, footsteps. But closer now, right behind the counter. The slow, deliberate sound of someone who is not in a hurry. Someone who has nowhere else to be. Don't let it see your face, I whispered, remembering Carla's words. That's right, said my manager very quietly. Don't let it see your face. I don't know exactly when I stopped hearing the footsteps. I know I stood near the entrance door with my back to the counter for a very long time, watching the parking lot, watching the yellow sodium light pooled on the empty asphalt, and I did not turn around. Not when I heard the drawer open again. Not when I heard something that sounded horribly like the soft exhalation of breath directly behind me. I gripped the door handle and I stared straight ahead and I waited. Dawn came the way it always does, gradually, then all at once. The sky over the highway went from black to the deep blue of a bruise to the gray of old ash. A delivery truck pulled into the lot. The driver climbed out, hitched up his jeans, and walked toward the door with the ordinary, oblivious confidence of someone who had never worked the night shift at this particular building. I held the door open for him. I smiled. I said good morning. He went to the coffee machine. I went to the monitor and looked at camera 6. The corridor behind the counter was empty. My relief lasted exactly as long as it took me to look down and see what was sitting on the counter beside the register. A time card. My time card from when I'd clocked in at midnight. But beside the punch time, in handwriting that was not mine, someone had written 2 words in ink so faint it looked like it was already fading. You're staying. I quit. I called my manager on the way home and I told him I wouldn't be coming back and that no amount of money was worth whatever lived in that building between midnight and 6. He didn't argue. He just said he understood. He said most people who called him from that shift didn't come back. Most. That word. I've been thinking about it for 3 weeks, lying in bed during the day while the sun is up, sleeping in daylight like a man who has developed a serious, non-negotiable allergy to darkness. I've been fine. I've been sleeping. I haven't seen anything. I haven't heard anything. But last night I woke up at 12:01 a.m. for no reason. Sat up in the dark, completely awake, the way you wake when something has called your name in a dream. And I was reaching for my phone when I noticed my hands. I was wearing gloves. Work gloves. The kind we kept under the counter for when deliveries came in. I don't own a pair of those gloves. I have never owned a pair of those gloves. I took them off. I put them in the trash. I turned every light in my apartment on and I sat in the kitchen until sunrise. Tonight, I woke up at 12:01 again. I was standing at my kitchen counter facing the wall. I don't remember getting up. I don't remember walking there. But my hands were resting on the surface in front of me, and they were moving in the slow, automatic rhythm of someone counting cash in a register that isn't there. And in my chest, quiet and certain as a second heartbeat, I felt the pull of it. The shift. My shift. Midnight to 6. Every night. Alone. I think Daniel Marsh tried to leave too. I think Carla knows what happened to him, and I think she knows what's happening to me, and I think that's why she recited those rules with her eyes like 2 closed doors. I think the building doesn't let you go. Not really. Not all of you. I'm writing this down while the sun is still up, while I still feel like myself, while the clock still reads 4:37 in the afternoon and there are birds outside and cars on the street and the whole loud normal world is still holding me inside it. Because I can feel it ending. I can feel the pull getting stronger. And somewhere on the other side of town, under the fluorescent lights that never turn off, beside a register that never stops humming, I think there's a hook on the wall in the back office and I think it's waiting for my jacket. And when you see someone in a dark green uniform standing at the end of that counter late at night, not moving, not turning, don't let it see your face. Don't speak to it. Just close your eyes. And whatever you do, don't clock in.